But you guys are you are so blessed to have Brother Hal, to have AIM as a support group. I kidded about those of you who've left Egypt, but I wasn't kidding. You may have come from a place where there's very little support, and you are walking into a community with a cause, I think is the way that you would put it. And they want to invest in you. And so if you allow me, before we're going to jump to the last couple pages of the training. I'm not going to have the time to talk about rivers and lakes. We can do that some other time. We'll be talking about some cultural comparisons here in a few minutes. But I want to just share this with you. There's a couple of reasons for what I do. And one of them is I shared earlier, is I traveled the country with a group that promotes church planting. I just discovered that us normative, sometimes agrarian-based churches, folks that lead just don't always understand what normative churches are like. And come at things in a way, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes. That's one of the reasons that we created, or that God called us to start, something called Dirt Roads Network. I mean, not all of us are going to be on dirt roads, but it's a way of saying that's where we're going to start, right? Dirt roads and up. And so lots of folks don't have. I happen to live on a dirt road too, just so you know. That's why my tires have to get replaced more often. But it's actually rock that I'm on. But the other thing is the need for community. Most of us in normative-sized churches do not have staff members. We don't have like a team to bounce ideas off. We're often in isolated places that are challenging to minister in. Many times where the Apostle Paul dealing with Corinth, I had someone just come up at this last break and talk about how they changed some music and a number of people left their church over that type of thing, right? It's hard work. And you can come to a conference and you can get inspired, and then you go back to your smaller place by yourself, and all of that excitement, and I felt the Holy Spirit saying this to me or this to me or this to me, and then it just sort of all flattens out, and 6 months from now you're right back where you are when you came here. And 6 months is being generous, right? It's usually quicker than that. And so what we like to do, what we do, is we offer community with like-minded pastors, and we do this online. And AIM is willing to invest in you, and I want to just share with you what it looks like. We don't call them cohorts, we call them cooperatives. How many of you know what a co-op is? All right? It's a group of people that have the same goal, and it isn't like top down, right? I mean, it's like we want you to understand, first of all, that we get agriculture, we get the agrarian mindset. But we also believe that word is perfect for the communities that we're creating online, because together we're trying to be missionaries and accept the Lordship of Jesus, and we're going to help each other do that. And so what we do is we create online communities that meet during the school year, September through May. They meet every other week, and what we do is we dive into this stuff in a very deep way, and we do peer mentoring. And so what we're offering to AIM, and what AIM has partnered with us in doing, is allowing you to join other pastors twice a month. I'm going to be the primary teacher of it. You will hear a whole bunch more of what we've been talking about here. We will talk about missionary, discernment, and river over and over again. We just believe that's at the very heart of what it means to be effective in ministry these days. But we will also do peer mentoring. We will allow you to bring, like you have a challenge in your congregation, we will present a way that you can share that with people who are like if you go to some big city church growth person and ask them a question about a conflict that you're having in your church, like let's say Aunt Edna can't sing and you don't know what to do about it. The big city folk is going to tell you that to be excellent, you need to fire Aunt Edna. And that might be the worst advice that you ever get. But if you're in a room with 15, 20 other pastors, and a few of them have had a few Aunt Ednas, and the Holy Spirit has showed them how to deal with that in an effective way, pump up the monitor, turn off the main. How many of you know what I'm talking about there, right? And allow, all the worship leaders are yes and amen. But some of the things we have are more difficult than that. You know, we've had pastors present issues where one of their board members has had a child that's come out of the closet, and then how do you walk the congregation through that? If you have a staff, you can sit. There's wise counsel that can come from a group of people. So what we do is we create an online community that is pursuing missionary, discernment, and river, and helping each other in ministry. And so what we do is we'll start in September, and it'll be every other week, and we make adjustments for Thanksgiving and Christmas, obviously. But generally what we charge a church $1,000 normally to be a part of this. AIM is going to step in and take half of that. We'll let you make monthly payments over a year thing with like $50. You make $50 a month for 10 months, and it's not a lot of money because I'm a missionary. I've raised support for my salary so we can do this at an inexpensive way. But I have pamphlets up here. There's lots of ways we'll be pumping out emails to all of you, give you an opportunity to join a community like this. And we're reserving some time slots for AIM pastors. So you will be with other AIM pastors. And you bring your congregation into these meetings. We're perfectly fine with that. It's per church. And so if you have 3 people in your church that want to join and you want them to be a part of this, if they're willing to commit to attend, we're going to have them in the Zoom call. I just want you to know that, because what we are called to do as Dirt Roads Network is to raise up an army of people who see themselves as missionaries right here where they are called in rural and small town America. That's what we're trying to do. And if you sense Holy Spirit is pulling you into that type of community, we want to walk alongside you, invite you in, and give you an opportunity every other week to be spurred on towards love and good deeds. I had someone come up to me, and I forget if it was this last break or the break before that, and they said, there's no one around me. I'm in a small town. There's no apostles. I'm a shepherd. I can't think of anybody in my church. Well, you're not going to call Brother Hal every week because he's told us he's going to do counseling, right? But if you can come into a community where people understand this, and you can begin to share, and we keep prayer lists. If you share with something with us, we call it Pastor in the Middle. We'll be asking you about it down the road. I've got texts this morning from someone that had a screamer on their board. How many of you have ever had a screamer? So that's lost. And so we had stepped in, we'd intervened. They had a big meeting last night, and they got the screamer off the board. And we have a group text of 12 pastors that are in a cooperative, and we prayed for her last night as she led through the board through that process. And we're celebrating online while I'm sitting down here, I'm reading this. We're celebrating because God did something special there. She probably wouldn't have been able to do that if she didn't have a community supporting her. Amen. And so if you're interested in joining a community with a cause, I have information up here. We will email out information. We will start in September. So we're at the end of June here, so it'll be a while. But we just figure in the churches we work with, everything's hooked into the school year anyway, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. The schools dictate our schedule. And so I want to invite you into that community. And I want to thank you, Brother Hal, and thank all of the leaders at AIM for investing in churches and saying, we'll pay half of the way for you to be in something like that, because a conference can only do so much. But being in a community, I think about like the people who hear you preach every Sunday. Don't you want them in a small group where they can have that interaction? Maybe you need to join a small group. Come on now. Are you with me on this? And so that's what we do. That's what we want to offer you. Thank you, Brother Hal, for being willing to support folks. We'll do that. So there's a total of I think it's 16 sessions when it's done, because we skip Thanksgiving and Christmas. And around half of that will be lessons, very much like the ones that you've heard today. And then the other half of that's peer mentoring, is we just allow each other, we bounce ideas off one another, we share our challenges with one another. So if you have questions about that, I'm going to be here all afternoon. I'll be here tonight and be able to just talk to you about that. Come up and get some of this information. You can even grab one of these fancy pens up here that says Dirt Roads Network. I'd like to invite you to turn to the last section in your notes here. We're gonna talk about an agrarian versus business mindset for a few minutes, because we are missionaries, and this is sort of taken a turn. I've been really challenging you to adopt a missionary mindset. So now I'm going to talk to you about what it means to be a missionary and dealing with the fact that there are different mindsets that people have. I want to ask you, how many of you were raised in a small town? How many of you were raised in a large town? Is there anyone here who is from a large town now pastoring in a small town? Oh, I feel for you guys. You guys are the, or flip side. I had someone tell me this here early, that they were raised in an agrarian place and God has called them into a tough inner city situation. Those are really interesting things. What I want to share with you is that when I moved, I grew up in Lansing, Michigan. My first pastorate, where I grew the church from 70 to 50, was in Akron, Ohio. Okay? 70th largest community at the time. 10,000 cars pass that church every day. I was a city slicker. I had no idea. Like, conceptually, I knew the difference in between a steer, a cow, a bull. I did. But I couldn't look across the pasture and just from like 500 yards away or a couple hundred yards away be able to tell the difference. Or how many of you even understand what I'm just saying, okay? I'm just curious. Some of you have I had no idea what a cheater bar was. How many of you know what a cheater bar is? You know what a cheater bar is, right? And so one of the famous stories is Steve McVeigh, his first week at Lamont Wesleyan Church. He's going to get out there with, like, I'm going to engage the community, right? And so one of our ranchers took us out, and I'm going to use language that some of you might not even understand. One of the ranchers took me out to do some feeding. We had square bales. We were flaking them off the back of a flatbed. How many of you know what I just said? Okay, so literally he had a piece of baling wire, put it in first gear. He had a mile section, a slight curve to the way that the wheels were. He puts a baling wire on the steering wheel. We slip out the windows. Are you guys with me on this, right? We get it and we're flaking off the bales. And I have no idea what's happening, right? I'm trying to act like I know what's happening, and I want to be helpful. And so what I decided at the very least I could do is open and close gates, right? As we went from pasture to pasture, at least open and close gates. And I had never encountered a cheater bar before. So I jump out, I open up the gate, we go in, we do our thing, we come out, and I jump out to close the gate, and I'm trying to figure out this cheater bar. I finally figured it out. It was some pretty tight wire, and I got it in there. And the rancher just sat there and watched me, and when I was done, I looked up and he said, "Do you suppose you should be on the outside of the gate when you close it?" Because remember, let's go to the picture of that church if we could. Remember, this is where I was called to, this little church right here, and I'm a city slicker. I had a lot to learn. Right. But what I want you to know, I did approach it as a learner because I'd been humbled. Leading a church from 70 to 50, I'd been humbled. And I want to share with you some things that I've learned. Some of this I found online back in 2001. Some of it we've just added 2 cents. What I've learned is that there's a different way that people think. Yep. And if I'm going to be a missionary, I have to operate in that. Yep. And this usually takes me around an hour and a half. We're going to go through it pretty quickly. We may come back to it in our learning community and in our cooperative. But I want to talk to you about some ways that agrarian people, and here's the other thing I want to say before I jump into this. You can live in a big city and have a church in a big city and still have people that have an agrarian mindset. And you can be in an agrarian place and have to deal with some people that have a business mindset, and none of it is scripturally based, right? It isn't like there's a scriptural answer to this. This is about how do I relate to people and their mindset as I lead them. And so let me just give you some examples. Let's go to the next slide. And I want to begin just with talking about how we view people. How many of you have been introduced to me? Like, I've walked around, I've said hi to you. What is the first thing I asked you? Where are you from? Where are you from, right? So Now some of you guys are going to say this just isn't true because you're so strong in one side of this, but I just want to talk to you about even the way that a business mindset, a city mindset, I would almost even say a church growth mindset, in some ways, like the way that it views people and the way that us farmer, agrarian type people view people. Are you with me on this? Yeah. So let's go through that first of all, and we can flip back and forth. I just want to start with a business mindset. The first thing I want to know is, what do you do? Because your job sort of defines you, right? What do you do? And where did you train? And who do you know? Because basically, I'm going to have a formal relationship with you. I want you to hear this. This is going to take a while. I want you to hang with me because it begins as we go slide after slide. You begin to get a whole picture of what I'm talking about. In the end, if I'm coming at this from a business mindset, when you walk into a relationship with me, even in the church, I'm trying to determine, are you an asset or a liability for my team? How can we leverage you so the team can be successful? I'm trying to get a network together of people that's going to accomplish a goal. Now, I want you to hear me. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm talking about the way that you think. There are people who have thought this way that have accomplished great things for Jesus. But I want you to know, if you walk into an agrarian mindset, folks in a country church, they don't think that way. Instead, they want to know who you really are. What kind of person are you? I want to know whether or not you know the difference in between a bull and a steer. And I want to know where you're from. I'm trying to figure out, I want to know who you're related to. Yeah. Because listen, I'm trying to decide not if you're in my team, but are you in my family? Yeah. Are you hearing me? I'm trying to decide whether or not you're in my family. And it isn't whether or not you're an asset or a liability or what talent you bring or not. I want to know who you are. Do you fit with us? Because I have a pretty clear understanding of insiders and outsiders. Are you guys with me on this? I want to know, can I trust you in my family? You guys thinking about this? Yep. And we're going to have an informal relationship. And once you're in, I'm going to be loyal to you, even if you're incompetent. That's why I turn down the mains and pump up the monitors, because I'm loyal to you. I had a pastor tell me, this is a true story. This was in Michigan. A pastor, he came into a church. It was 8 years ago. He told me this story last year. So it was 7 years before. He was telling me a story that had happened 7 years before. He walked into a larger agrarian church, a church of a couple hundred. They had a full-time secretary who had the spiritual gift of grumpiness. Hey. Wasn't exactly savvy with technology either. And had just, she was 65 years old. And everybody knew that she was a problem. She was also very connected. Are you guys with me on this? And they said to the pastor, she really needs to go. But listen, they didn't mean it. Because that's something we'll get to in a couple minutes. You got to listen with something other than your ears when you're dealing with people like this, all right? With us, when you deal with us, right? We communicate in so many subtle ways. We just do. And so he sat down with this lady and managed a way for her to get some early retirement so that she could leave. And she went along with it in front of him and then went and told everybody that she got fired. And the very board that had told him this is a problem felt that he had been disloyal to her. And here we were 7 years later, and he says, I'm still seen as the pastor that fired her. You guys don't know, that's awkward, isn't it? Yeah. But and did she need to be fired? Man, we're going to have to get a pastor in the middle and have a conversation about what you do, because we all have situations like that. That's right. Because it's a family tree, and if you're in the family, you're in the family. Our very first staff member was a guy by the name of Jess Allen. You guys, none of you would know Jess Allen. He's a church planter. Some of you know John West, I think. He came in after John West in one of John West's churches. But Jess Allen got saved under the ministry of John Maxwell out in San Diego, California. Had been trained by John to be their young adults leader. He had then went and got a political science degree and went to work for John McCain in Arizona. He had I can tell you all the places that this guy, he was a highly qualified guy. And when I introduced him to the folks at Lamont Wesleyan Church, I told them, and this was true, that he had been the pastor of my wife's sister, and that his kids had nut allergies, and that he's a good guy. I never mentioned John Maxwell. I never mentioned all the other, like John McCain. I never mentioned his political science degree on top of what the other degrees he had. I'd never mentioned that because we weren't looking for an asset or liability. We were bringing someone into our family, and he had already known someone and ministered to someone who was in our family, so I'm introducing him to my family through my relationships. Are you hearing what I'm saying? We just view people differently if we're in an agrarian mindset. They view you differently, by the way, too. You're not going to, if you truly are with agrarian people, you're not going to impress them with how talented and skilled and by the things that you have on the wall that tell us that you have degrees. They want to know, do you fit with us? Do you love us? Right. Are you a part of our family? Mm-hmm. All right, you with me on this? Yeah. Let's talk about communication. Let's go to the next one. How do we communicate with each other? If we go to the next slide. City people talk a lot. They do. They have opinions. Now, Hal, you're not a city person, okay, just for the record. But this they don't say, like, for them, okay, clarity is kindness. So if they feel something and it isn't kind, they're still going to tell you because they think that's kind for you to know exactly how they feel. Us agrarian people read that as being pushy, opinionated, and not very loving. Yeah. This is just good stuff here, right? Okay, you guys, some of you are just going to have to wrestle with this. By the way, on that last page, I really do believe you should go through your leadership team and okay, where are different, because none of this is right or wrong. I've set, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes, some fights that I've set through with churches that had nothing to do with Jesus and just were people culturally not understanding each other. A city person, you say they mean it when they do it. Talk is cheap when they act, and they are straightforward. Agrarian people are low verbal people. You don't find a lot of farmers that are going to talk substantially about stuff that really matters. They just don't talk a lot. And they communicate non-verbally. And this is more than just farmers. This is ag people in general. So this gentleman up here, I'm going to pick on you just because you're up front and because we've had a conversation. If I'm going to ask this gentleman a question that I know is going to be difficult for him to answer, I might as well just put in earplugs because I'm not listening to a word the man says. What I'm going to do is I'm going to watch the first second after that hard question. What do you think of George? Whatever his first reaction is, he just told me what he thinks of George. Now, he's going to find a way to say, well, George has some really strong points. He really does. And I like this about him, I like this about him, and I think he's probably a pretty good person. But he told me in that first second, I'm not sure about George. Are you guys with me on this? Right. I've had pastors say, my board isn't telling me anything. And I sit down with them, they're screaming at him. He just doesn't see it, or she just doesn't see it. It's nonverbal. See, they won't say, an agrarian person doesn't want to say no to you. Like, you're my pastor, you say, would you come, would you help with this ministry on Thursday nights? I'm not going to say no. But what I am going to do is I'm going to say yes to something else, and then say, man, I would love to say yes. I am so sorry, but I made this commitment to go. You guys hear what I'm saying? I have to be set. If I'm a missionary, I have to, and some people say, well, why are these people just so passive aggressive? Listen, they're communicating with you in their native language. Right. You wouldn't go to Africa and force people to speak in English, would you? Right. Some of us would have to. Oh, my goodness. Here's what else I want to tell you. You have an agrarian person on your board and they finally do speak up? Oh, you better listen. Right. Do you know how much they overcame to be able to speak up about something? Yeah. They must feel very strongly about that. They really, if they say something, they mean it. Right. Because it hurt them to say it. And everything about their communication generally is very subtle. Where I live, this is probably, you have to learn the language of your community because every small town has its own story. Yeah. Right? If you've seen one small town, do you know how many small towns you know? One. Right? Every one of them is different. But where I'm from, if someone says to me, Pastor, do you want me to help mow the lawn? And the next person says, Pastor, would you like me to help you mow the lawn? Those are not the same things. That's very subtle, right? The guy who says want is willing to, if I obligate him to, and it's going to cost me a little bit of change in my pocket, they're willing to do it because they have to do it, right? The person who says to me, would you like me to do it, is someone who wants to do it. Now that may be completely different in your community, right? Right. But I have to be willing to pick up on the subtle things when I'm leading people. So you get to the point where you know your leadership team well enough that you allow them to say no to something without them having to be mean about it. And by the way, if there's complete silence when you share an idea, that means no. Okay? That means no. Now we'll get into a few other things here in just a minute. Let's talk about competency. I think you'll have to flip over 2 slides. I'm going to avoid all the blank slides. Those are for discussion. We're not going to do those, so we'll just ignore the blank slides. Let's talk about competency. What does it mean to be a competent person? Let's talk about a business mindset for just a minute. From a business mindset, everybody has a specialty. And by the way, us pastors fall into this because we're the religious experts. We know the Bible, right? If I come from this mentality, that's what I know. And if I'm gonna get something done, I'm gonna hire that expert to get it done. Now we're gonna just jump into it today. I mean I'm just gonna pull several of these together because specialist is what we're looking for, and we're gonna be interdependent. I want to confess this to you. I always shopped at a grocery store for meat. I haven't bought beef from a grocery store in an awful long time because I'm not going to count on somebody else. I know the name of the animal that's in my deep freeze. We sort of do things our own way. You understand? We take care of each other. If I call 911, it's going to take 40 minutes, and that's not an exaggeration. 40 minutes for a professional to get there. We're gonna take care of ourselves. All right. I just to like jump ahead a little bit. The business mindset is to put together a winning team. Now, here's what I want you to hear: an agrarian person is a jack of all trades. If you're a farmer, you are also a day trader, a mechanic, a veterinarian. You're a painter. Do I need to keep going here? Do you want to know all the things? You are a jack of all trades. And nothing costs like a Deere. And one of the problems with that is that they've got this set up now with John Deere where you've got to have a specialist fix everything. You know, that is so irritating. Right. Some of you are saying yes and amen. The rest of you, what are you talking about, Steve? Of course you would hire a mechanic if you're... No, you won't. But they're making us now. Oh, my goodness. Because what I want is to adequately do everything myself. I don't want to be an agrarian mindset. I can do this. I can handle this. Right? And I'm a generalist. I want to be independent and a lone ranger. I have to be aware of this as I lead people. Now, biblically, I am called to be a part of a spiritual community. Yeah. This makes it very hard, by the way, to do discipleship with agrarian people. You have to be very, very savvy. This is one where I have to allow the gospel to speak to culture. But just understand, folks do not want to be interdependent. I'm going to just tell the story before I get to the slide. Another thing that's different is the way we view money. All right, so like money and time, like in a business mindset, you have money so that you can spend money so that you make more money. And in our mindset, you have money so that you can save it for a rainy day and you put it aside, right? Okay, you understand that, right? So pastors walk into churches and they see they have a year's worth of income in a bank somewhere and they, wow, we can use that for Jesus. No, you can't. All right, we don't really have that money. That's there to save for a rainy day. So I told you we started doing satellite ministry. And the first satellite that we started was right next to a nuclear plant in the middle of nowhere. But they brought in a bunch of professionals, right? I mean, if you're a nuclear operator, the starting salary is $120,000 a year to be a nuclear operator. All right, so they bring in all these city folk and put them in the middle of a country setting. And so we planted a church. Well, it became a church plant, but it was a satellite over there. We developed a leadership team over there, and we have some trustees that are going to take care of what happens at that particular facility. And then we have one board that meets every month and looks over the finances, right? And I don't know how you guys do it, but that's how we did it at that time because we were one church in multiple locations. The water heater goes out over at that campus. And the trustees hired a plumber at $75 an hour, which isn't that much anymore, and paid full price for a water heater and a plumber to put it in. And we come to board meeting. Now, first of all, do you think Jesus on the cross cares one iota about how we replace the water heater? Okay? But we want to be good stewards. Okay, this is what being a wise leader is about. You have people who believe the right answer is to hire an expert, get it done, because one, we have more time, we have more money than time anyway. Let's just get this done. And then you have farmers looking at how much we spent, and they know they could have run down to the do-it-yourself place, got a much cheaper water heater, put it in themselves, just like they would have done at home. I have to be savvy to these things. Are you guys with me on this? This is a fascinating study. We'll keep going into it. Like work. What is work? In a business mindset, work is expertise contributed. And it's like I have a pen. Like when I'm crafting a sermon, I'm working in a business mindset or a city mindset. In the agrarian mindset, work is when you work. Work is physical. I can tell who the rural people are when they laugh at that, right? It's physical energy extended. Why do you think they think pastors are lazy? Because some of them are, and because, can I just say that? I can say that, can I? Do you know that some folks go out into the countryside and pastor in small churches because the expectations are so low that they can just live their life? That's true. But many of us, I probably shouldn't have said that. No one here, I'm sure, right? But anyway, go back to all the other lessons that I just taught about. We're missionaries. Mow your own lawn, Pastor, if you can.
Right.
Not only do you get to smell the grass, which has a chemical in it that spurs your brain on, which is true, stimulates your brain. Not only will you be able to look back and, unlike everything else you do, actually see that you accomplished something,
Right.
but you will be seen as someone who works.
Right.
Yeah. And go back to that idea of like, well, I'm the pastor, I'm the expert, I'm gonna do this. Just think about that last slide. No, you're not. You need to be a jack of all trades, just like they are, right? That's what they expect of you. I'm a pastor, I won't do that. Are you kidding me? So because you have to drive 25 miles in order to go out to eat in Lamont on a Sunday afternoon, we have lots of church feeds. Covered dish meals, potlucks, whatever you want to call them. We usually provide a meat and Like once a month we do this. And when it's done, because we're all like, we're agrarian people who work, no one's going to leave without apologizing until everything's back where it needs to be, because everybody has to put the tables back up, right? Because we have a big sanctuary, but it converts into our fellowship hall. And by the way, you better not stand and watch them put up those tables, right? Are you guys, this is just good, practical, normal stuff. Here's what I do is we're cleaning up. I go over, I have hidden a vacuum cleaner. No one knows where it is, right? Well, I'm sure they do. But I go and I grab that vacuum cleaner, I plug it in, I start vacuuming. Someone comes up and talks to me, I turn that vacuum on or off, and I hold on to it with both hands. Nobody is getting this vacuum cleaner. And the average person is going to walk by and they're going to say, there's my pastor. He loves to work, but he's also a pastor, and he's ministering to that person. He's working, and just you say, well, Steve, is that manipulative? I don't think it is. No. I think it's understanding. A missionary, like if you were a missionary, you would do the things that you need to do to culturally fit in. And I don't care what seminary degree you have. Work is work. If you're going to be in an agrarian place, you're going to have to work. And so show them some work, because this isn't in the presentation, but I just want to tell you how it is where I am. And this isn't in the church world. I'm talking about the culture that I live in. You are thought of more highly if you're an alcoholic cheater who works hard than you are a good moral person who's lazy.
Right. That's right.
There ain't nothing that you can say about someone worse than they're lazy, where I am. So, Pastor, I've got to fight that so that I'm not viewed that way.
Right.
You say, well, I'm supposed to shepherd the sheep, apostles, prophets, evangelists, equip God's... Yeah, but you're also going to be a jack of... You've become a missionary. You need to be a jack of all trades. Do we really have to be done already at noon? Can we go on just a little bit?
Yes, sir. Finish.
Okay, all right. What is success? Oh, this is going to be tough. Success is expansion in a business mindset. Bigger is better, larger is the goal. What is success? It's always growing. Now, you're going to have to hear me out on this, Pastor Hal, because you are going to want to fire me here in just a minute, okay? but hear me out to the end on this. In an agrarian mindset, survival is the goal. It's the first thing you think of. It's been a long time since the early 80s, but every farmer I know knows about the farming crisis of the early 80s and is absolutely convinced it's going to happen again tomorrow. And can you blame them? There's so many things that can go wrong when you don't control the price of seed, you don't control the weather, this gets into some other stuff we're going to talk about in just a minute. You don't control anything. You are taking a risk anytime you put seed in the ground or anytime you feed a bucket calf. You're taking a risk, and you want to make sure that you survive. That is the goal. And smaller is preferable. There are entire online communities that are committed to the grief process of the fact that the small family farm no longer exists and that you have to be a larger operation in order to survive today. That's not seen as a positive thing. Larger is a necessary concession for survival. Am I preaching the truth here, guys?
Yeah.
So you come in, you want to present your vision to the church. You have figured out that story, why Jesus put you where it is, where he's put you, and it is going to involve growth. Understand that growth isn't the carrot that you want to put in front of people, because it's not a carrot for them, it's a concession. You know the carrot you want to put in front of them? Heaven and hell. I'm going to have to concede that my church is going to have to get larger because eternity is at stake.
Right.
Are you hearing me?
Right.
That may feel counterintuitive, but that's the only reason your church should grow anyway.
Right.
Don't think, if you're truly dealing with an agrarian mindset, that you can attract them towards a bigger church. What you have to attract them towards is a soul-winning church, where eternity is making the difference. And there's going to be sacrifice. You heard Brother Hal say that. And one of the sacrifices is there's going to be people like, it's going to have to be larger, but the kingdom matters enough that we can get larger. That is so counterintuitive for us pastors who our very self-worth is sometimes determined by the size of our church. Of course everything wants to be bigger. And then why don't they want to become bigger? Because you're just talking to them about bigger, and bigger isn't better for them. But heaven is better for them, and seeing their friends brought into heaven is something that they're willing to do and concede some bigness in order to change the kingdom of God. Are you guys hearing what I'm saying? This is fundamental to why so many pastors struggle when they come from a big city mindset or a church growth mindset, and they find themselves in a smaller community, a smaller group of believers, and they're like, why don't you want to grow large? You're asking the wrong question. The question is, why don't you want to see people saved?
Right.
Preaching again.
Good.
Let's talk about money real quick. We're just going to have to fly through this. We'll do some more teaching on this in our online communities. In the business mindset, there's always more money. You spend it to get ahead. You use it for growth. In an agrarian mindset, I have a lot more time than I have money. And I need to spend it to maintain survival, because survival is success. Are you guys with me on this? And I need to save it for a rainy day. I've already said this once, I'll say it again. So many pastors walk into a smaller church, they see you have $50,000 in the bank or whatever it might be, and we're gonna be able to invest this in the kingdom. Not in their mind. I want to tell you real quickly, and I'm going to go over just a few, this is just important stuff. I want to tell you how you do this. Have any of you ever heard of a faith budget? Anyone heard of a faith budget? Like, this is what the Lord wants us to do, and so I want you to know that doesn't work in an agrarian mindset. Here's what you do. You have two budgets. I'm going to give you one more practical advice, and then we'll just go through the rest of these real quick. You have two budgets. Have your operations budget. In your mind, think survival budget. This is what we need to survive. Salaries, insurance, utilities. That's your operations budget. And then come to an agreement about your rainy day fund. How many months do we need to have in the bank in reserves? Come to an agreement on that. And we even write that down somewhere. We need at least $45,000, whatever it is. We need at least this much money in the bank. Then your faith budget, which is a list of things you believe God would like to do and a price tag on every one of them. And as we've met the operations budget, and as we have the money in the rainy day fund, and then God provides, we're going to do these things in this order as God provides. That's a faith budget they can believe in. And not only that, what you'll discover is that there are some folks who can write that check that you have no idea they can write that check. They'll see that item and say, well, I could fund that. And that list begins to get done without you triggering the survival mentality of a board member who truly wants to be on your team and wants to see those things done, but is afraid you're going to spend the rainy day fund if they do it in a merged budget. Just be savvy with them. All right, good deal. Let's move on to the decisions. How do you make decisions? I'm going to have to explain some of this to you. I am sorry. We're going to go over how, and we'll just. I'm going to go. The lunch is worth waiting for. Now, I do not like this first row up there because it has to be explained. If you put seed in the ground, you're an optimist. All right? I mean, can we just start with that? I'm not saying that farmers are negative people or pessimistic people. But what I'm talking about is a perspective. A business person tends to want to shoot for the moon, take a lot of risk, and just go for it. An agrarian person wants to accomplish amazing things. They put seed in the ground, but they think of absolutely everything that can go wrong, and they begin to prepare a plan as if it is going to go wrong, but they still put seed in the ground. Are you guys, now let me just explain how this works in a board so you understand it. You present an idea, Pastor, like, I'm wondering if the Lord isn't asking us to do this. Dead silence means, okay. What does, but what if this happens, or what if this happens, or what if this happens means? I want to tell you what it means. It means with all their heart they think that might be what God wants them to do, and they're going to plan just the way they plan. Let's start thinking about everything that could go wrong. Have you done due diligence? Are we prepared? And you have, I don't know how many pastors, the board's against us. No, they're not. They just want you to do your homework like they would do homework before they buy a new piece of ground or put seed in there, whatever the case may be. Do you hear what I'm saying? It's a different mindset. So that's the perspective of decisions. Then formal versus informal. If you have to use Robert's Rules of Orders, you've lost, right? Here's what I say about boards. I'm going to skip through a little bit of this. But a good board meeting is like a wedding. You've already done the premarital counseling. You know everyone's going to say, I do. And we're going to come together. That ain't how city people do. You put city people in a room, they fight with each other, and then they come out with a decision and they all agree with it. Us rural people, agrarian people, we have all those discussions at the coffee shop and other places, and we've had time to let people build and have consensus. And then when we vote, and we already know everyone's going to say, I do. Are you guys with me on this? Let's go to the next slide real quick. Planning. Oh man, I just feel like I'm just skipping out so many things here. Business folks, they set goals. And if those goals don't have dates on them, they're just a dream, right? I mean, it's it's like, here's a prioritized list. We're gonna have this done by this time. We're gonna have this done by this time. We're gonna have this done by this time. That ain't how agrarian people think. Agrarian people, first of all, they're very flexible. We're gonna make hay when the sun shines. I've got a list of things that need to be done. And depending on what the harvest is this year, depending on what the prices are this year, I'm going to pay Uncle Sam as little as possible. And this year we might not get to buy the new tractor. And next year we might buy a new tractor and a combine because things are right. You hear what I'm saying? Yep. Why would you approach someone who thinks that way with a 5-year plan that has to have this is what we believe God is wanting to do. And we will make hay when the sun shines. Because everything's seasonal with them anyway. And if I were to tell you the story, there are times where we've had 18 months where nothing happened, and then in 3 months, more than what should have happened in 2 years happened. Right. Because you make hay when the sun shines. And so you plan by the task. This is what we're going to do next, and then this is what we're going to do next. And allow for some flexibility. You can't tell people who don't control the weather, don't control the price of anything, don't control what they're going to get for anything, that you have control of anything, because they don't have control of anything in their business. You guys with me on this? Yeah. All right, good deal, good deal. So we're going to just stop right there.